Hey guys, welcome back to the Kool-Aid Podcast. Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 136. On today's episode, we're going to be giving you a Barcelona season review. We're going to be basically talking about everything that happened throughout this entire season, what went well, what went bad, what needs to be improved. We're going to be talking about what Barcelona has won. We're going to be talking about everything that happened throughout the Barcelona season. Guys, remember, I post a link on Twitter at Kool-Aid Podcast 10. Anytime you guys ever want to join, and give your thoughts, comments, whatever you guys want to do. Always feel free and welcome. Just click on the link and you'll be able to join. But let me introduce my co-hosts for today, both Alvaro and Alex.
Hey guys, what's up?
What's up, guys?
All right, guys. I think there's no place better to start than from the beginning of the season, where Barcelona have that like amazing transfer window where we bring in Robert Lewandowski, we bring in Koundé, Rafinha, basically a whole bunch of players. But guys, remember, get your meals, get anything, because it's going to be a long episode. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. But what do you guys make of Barcelona's start of the season, especially like the transfer window?
Get your meals, guys.
Yeah, get your meals, get everything, bro.
I'll let Alex start. Go ahead.
Right, so off the bat, like you said, it was a great transfer window for us. I think, not considering when we got Neymar and Suarez. I know there were different transfer windows, but not considering that, I think this is the best transfer window we've had in recent years.
It is. Mm-hmm.
We got much needed players. A proper striker. We got a good another winger, which was Rafinha. We strengthened our defense by a lot,
Which was key like throughout the entire season. Like that defense, like our defense has been rock solid like throughout the entirety of La Liga season. We've only conceded, I believe, these past couple of games have Barcelona have been conceding like tons of goals, but Barcelona have kept like for the majority of the season lots of clean sheets. And it wasn't until like a couple of weeks ago where we only had 13 goals, and then it was before it was 11, and then it was 9. But yeah, the defense with Koundé, Christensen, huge additions to the squad.
for sure. And we saw a good start to the season, I would say. I mean, we did tie that first game, I believe, against Valladolid.
Yeah.
But or was it Rayo Vallecano? I don't remember right now.
I believe it's yeah, you're right. I think it's not. I think it's Rayo Vallecano.
It was the Rayo Vallecano. Yeah.
Right,
That
so,
1-1 draw.
right.
Yep.
So right.
Well,
So
actually, nil. My
yeah,
bad.
0-0, right.
Mhm.
So we saw at the beginning of the season, things started off pretty well. Not considering that game, of course. I thought from the beginning we did well in the league. Yes, we had the loss against Madrid. I think it was the first match we played against them. We lost.
Yes, the first match against Madrid in the league, we lost 3-1, and this is where like the fame, like the viral video of the Madrid fan just going like, "Hey, Xavi, quédate." And this was after our poor like UCL form, which we are going to get into, but that was like after our poor run of form. We did lose 3-1, and the whole squad was injured basically.
Yeah, so I thought we started off the season well, but then
Okay.
we did have a lot of injuries leading up to that October month, um, which it was terrible for the squad. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, yeah, nonetheless, I thought it was a good start. It's just things started to get shaky with the injuries.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
okay, right here, I'm sharing my screen. I'm sharing the fixtures between like all the month of October. As you guys see, remember we played against Mallorca. We got that very good, that tough, grindy win. That 1-0 win from an amazing goal from Robert Lewandowski. And then this is where like our Champions League like run basically started. We did play 2 games before in September. The 5-1, the huge win against Victoria Pilsen, which we thought like, hey, this is Barcelona like moving into full effect. How are we going to do against Bayern? Against Bayern, we saw that Barcelona can compete at the very highest level, but our lack of finishing and our lack of clinical nature up top, chances, especially missed by Pedri and Lewandowski, just when you don't put away your chances against Bayern, you are going to pay for it. And that's when Bayern, they do get the score sheet. And this is when Barcelona's Champions League poor run of form and then a little poor run started. But guys, what do you make of that October period?
I mean, kind of going off what I said, it was. I mean, it was injury plagued, and we saw how we started getting like the the non Barca fans started saying that Barca can compete in Europe, that they can only do it in La Liga. I mean, but it was an injury plagued month, and pretty much leading on to the World Cup break. And I mean, it was embarrassing for us that for a second straight year we couldn't get past the group stage. I mean, what else is there to say? But the important thing is that in terms of La Liga, we battled through all those injuries and adversity,
Mm-hmm.
even with very thin depth. We stayed afloat in La Liga, winning against some tough rivals. The unfortunate part was in the UCL.
Yeah. Okay. But like here's my response to that. For example, that 1-0 defeat against Inter away at the San Siro. Remember that controversial penalty that Dumfries handball that wasn't called in our favor? That Chananoglu tackle on Busquets, which was like a clear red card. Those two instances, which could have completely changed the outcome of the game. For example, if we get a draw there, then it's a completely different story. Then Inter in the second game, they need to get a win as well. A draw is insufficient for them. But then you also saw because Araujo was injured, because Koundé was injured, because Christensen was injured. All these players were injured for that Inter game at home where Barcelona, hey, we did get the goal first. Both Piqué and Eric Garcia were starting in the defense. I think that completely demolished us. It's just like it doesn't fill you with confidence to have these players back. But I would also say injuries played a huge role in Barcelona not getting past the group stage. I would say that if next season we reinforce the squad with quality, we can make it because Barcelona has shown that we can compete at the highest level. Just when our starters are not fit, Barcelona will struggle. I think it's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, you can't put it better than that. It was. I thought October was, yes, we had poor performances. The first Bayern game in September was completely our fault, just terrible finishing. But like you said, October was just mainly injuries that screwed us over. Yes, there was the first game against Inter where we saw some controversial refereeing decisions, but ultimately it was the injuries that killed us, especially in that second game. Like you said, our backline was completely lost. You know, we didn't have any of our starters, essentially. I mean, maybe with the exception of Balde. But it was just terrible that month.
It was.
I remember it so vividly now. Like I'm thinking back on all the
Yeah.
depression that came with it. You know, not
Yeah,
being
and then like that famous PK meme where PK's like this, like holding up in the air.
yeah.
And that meme just like went completely viral, just and I saw like a whole bunch of memes saying like, oh, like PK with a stop sign, like directing traffic, or like PK trying like to enter the multiverse, like the Doctor Strange, because like, the Doctor Strange movie came out around that time period. It was just like that. And that's where that PK meme went viral. And then just to add to our suffering, we did get that huge loss against Real Madrid in the league. I believe we were 3 points behind Real Madrid in that point. And then, as you see, just Barcelona get two huge wins against Villarreal and Athletic Club just to boost our confidence. And that last game against Bayern, Barcelona didn't really have anything to play much. They do get the win against Victoria Pilsen just to basically like round off. But analyzing our Champions League season as a whole, I would say it's one thing being in that Barcelona, they were affected by key injuries at the worst moment in time. It was a congested schedule. All of our key players were injured, for example, not only in the defense, but in the offense as well. For example, we had Pedri injured. And just without the quality of depth, Barcelona really struggled. But Barcelona were able to do really well in the league. But what do you guys make of that Champions League run? Did you just final thoughts, like discussing about the Champions League? Do you guys think that Barcelona is able to compete next season in the Champions League?
I'll let Alvaro say those ones first.
I mean, this team, that team, like you said, I mean, if we had health in when it comes to the group stage, we could have very well made it pass into round 16. But um, no matter how many moves we make and now in the off season, in the summer, as long as we address the basic needs, this team should have no issue walking past the group stage. I mean, avoiding obviously not mentioning that we get a possible like destructive group of like Madrid, City, whatever.
Mhm.
But this team should have no issue. I mean, the players themselves, like Pedri, Gavi, they are more polished in the midfield. They're controlling the game with more ease. And this team on paper should have no issue with that. Not thinking of all the reinforcements that are gonna come with signings, right back at the pivot,
Yeah.
up top. So I mean, to answer your question, I'm I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm not worried about them not making it past the group stage next season.
Okay. Alex.
Yeah, so on kind of what Alvaro said, assuming we can't even consider the transfer window because we don't know who's going to come. I mean, we have an
Yeah.
idea, but not considering that, if we were just to say it's the same team running it back, I'm not worried as long as we don't have the injuries, right? We're 100% healthy. I think we can do much better than we did. And I
Mhm.
think maybe not a UCL winning team, but definitely a team that can get us deep into the knockout stages.
And we also have to look in that this four-man midfield, for example, that we're playing, and our best defensive back line, which is back. Xavi was tinkering with it. Xavi, for the game against Bayern, for the game against Inter, he rocked with three forwards up top. He didn't rock with that four-man midfield. It was only against that last game against Bayern, in those games against Atletico Club and the Villarreal, where he implemented that four-man midfield. And then the team, we know it was experimenting. It was seeing how the team worked, and it wasn't until much later where Barcelona got comfortable with it, like towards the end of the season. But after that win against Victoria Pilsen, basically the last game of the Champions League, we had Pique's farewell. Pique announced after that, like Pique wasn't playing well, and this was like exposed in that game against Inter. Pique he basically announced his retirement from football. He said farewell in the game against Almeria, where Barcelona won 2-0. Let me just show you guys, just to give you guys a little refresher. But it was this game at home, the 5th of November, where Barcelona say goodbye to Piqué, a Barcelona legend, and we end off basically the 2020 the season basically with that huge win against Osasuna a couple days later. But what were your thoughts on Piqué's like farewell? Did it catch you off guard? Now looking back on it, do you think it was the right decision? Would you have liked Piqué to stay for the season a little bit longer? What were your thoughts on that?
So I'm gonna have to say that it did catch me off guard. I thought, maybe this was his last season with the club, but he's retired, right? He's no longer a footballer. It's not just that he is not playing with Barca; he's just not a footballer anymore. So I think that's what mainly caught me off guard.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
he just said like, "Hey, from out of the blue, hey guys, I'm retiring just from right now." Like right before the World Cup, there were some rumors like saying like, "Hey, is he going to be going to the World Cup?" But
well, I mean, I believe he's been out of the Spanish team for some seasons now.
yeah, yeah,
Um, right. So yeah, I think it caught me off guard. But looking back on it, I guess it was a good decision. I don't know if it's the best because he could have just done what Jordi Alba did, basically just staying with the team until the end of the season, although he barely played, and maybe he catch a game here or there. But I mean, I think it was a good decision for him. He's a great player, huge legacy, and he'll be missed, of course. But I don't think I don't think he's got money to worry about. I mean, he is wealthy um, from his family and football, so
hmm
he'll be fine. So yeah, but I thought for sure it was a little unexpected.
and definitely him, for example, leaving at the time, it basically saves us a ton of wages. For example, um, because like PK, he didn't have to leave at that point of time, and if he left at that point of time, he would have given up on some of the wages. I mean, him doing that just it was a huge boost to Barcelona, for example. Because when we later go on into the both Jordi Alba's exit and Busquets exit, we mentioned like how much financially like they're helping us, because Barcelona needed to, I believe it was to basically cut down like 200 million euros on the wage bill, and they've managed to do already 100 mil of that, like basically like half that. So they just need to do like a couple more sales, and then Barcelona have enough like revenue to just basically go back to like the 1 to 1 rule. Basically, a player leaves, a player comes. That's as simple. But I don't know. What do you make of PK's like a farewell?
I mean, it was a bit unexpected. We were kind of hoping, yeah, I think that's the right word. We were kind of hoping that Busquets, Alba, and Piqué would kind of like leave at the end of the year to allow for a new wave, a new era in Barca to fully blossom. I mean, again, for a name like his, for such a historical figure in football and in Barca, it was shocking for him to leave mid-season. I mean, I feel like we all would have expected and liked maybe to have him the full season, just do a farewell like Busquets and Jordi did. But I mean, yeah, he shows that it wasn't forced by the staff. So I
Hmm.
mean, there's not much else to say. I mean,
Okay.
he was mature enough, and his love for the club was strong enough for him to realize that he was just hurting the club at a at a competitive level because he wasn't who he was anymore. So I
Yeah,
mean,
he wasn't at the level required. For example, the
right.
games against Inter, he just like wasn't at it. He wasn't at the paces. It basically showed like, hey, this is a good point for you to retire, because the games against Inter, it was just like exposed like how poor he is at the moment. And on top of that, with Araujo, with Christensen, he's a player who wasn't getting the game time. But guys, then the FIFA World Cup happens. The GOAT, he wins the World Cup, a huge event that basically ends off the year. And Barcelona's final game of the 2022 calendar year was against Espanyol. This is where a game that Barcelona, wasn't the most brilliant, but Barcelona managed to get a draw. But then we move on to the Copa del Rey, where Barcelona, they do have a very tough game against Intercity. And I remember this, where Araujo starts and he had like a huge clearance um, off the line, but Barcelona struggled a little bit. And this is where I believe it was like the Barca academy player. He got a hat trick in that game. And then we go back into La Liga, where we get that tough 1-0 draw, where we see that amazing, I believe it was Dembele goal off of like a Pedri assist. But Barcelona didn't play well that game. Barcelona did not play well that game. Atletico Madrid looked very good. They were piling on the pressure, but Barcelona do manage to get the 3 points, which gives us a huge advantage. And then we move in, and then we go into Saudi Arabia, where we play the two games in the Super Copa de España, where we play Real Betis. We win on penalties, and then we play against Real Madrid in the final, where we had that huge convincing performance, one of the best performances against Real Madrid. But what do you guys make of that Super Copa run? What do you guys make of that run?
I thought Barca are very convincing, and I think this is maybe when they peaked in the season, when they were at their highest. We saw a phenomenal run of games leading up to the final, and before and after, I would say as well. We still had a good run. Thinking back on that semifinal, it was very nervy, especially when we went to penalties. I was shitting bricks. I'll be the first to say, against Betis, but then the game against Madrid was just phenomenal. It was just sheer domination. At the end, Barca didn't really care because they knew they were winning, so Madrid got the goal. But it was a very convincing performance, to be honest. And I think this is the best we saw Barca all season. Like I said,
Yeah, exactly. Like that performance against Real Madrid was one of the best like throughout the entirety season. Just because this is a final, this is against Real Madrid. Barcelona completely dominate. We put three past them, and it wasn't until like the very like, couple minutes where Barcelona's like, "Hey, the game's basically over," and Real Madrid score. But Ivo, what did you make of Barcelona lifting the Super Copa de España and Xavi's first trophy at the club as a
I
manager.
mean, it was a kind of like a sweet victory after. I mean, again, like you said, well, it was their first trophy for Xavi, and especially after missing on the UCO round 16 once again. So I mean, it was kind of like a little hooray for Barca fans. I mean, they were still not satisfied, but it was a nice pick me up victory for them. And I mean, again, they completely dominating against Madrid. So I mean, that was a period that there were like three classicals playing. I don't know what short span. So I mean, that was the first one that was played, right? Or the second?
That was the first one. The later classicals
First
would be
one,
coming
right?
in basically in the month of March
So
to April,
yeah,
where we would
and I feel
play
like
like
that
three
dominance
classicals.
over
Yeah.
I feel like that dominance over Madrid just gave Barca some hope to show that that team is very beatable. I don't
Hmm.
care that what that wasn't in a La Liga setting or a UCL setting. It was still a victory against your biggest rival. So I mean, and we saw how well Barca matched up against Madrid the rest of the way. So
Uh-huh. But then we pick up, like a couple more victories after that. We continue playing in the Copa del Rey. Barcelona keep grinding out La Liga, even though sometimes we're not playing that well. And then we face Manchester United in the Europa League. This is where Xavi just completely, I believe, just like he isn't taking the Europa League seriously. He doesn't start both Balde and Christensen. He starts
Mhm.
Marcos Alonso and Jordi Alba, and this is where Barcelona basically they draw the game 2-2.
and look, I was gonna say this earlier, but I ended up leaving my hand. I feel like back this shabby experimentation that we were all pissed off with.
Hmm.
Obviously it started with the October injuries leading into the break, but I feel like if we were to look at the starting 11s, most of them following this Man U second leg,
Hmm.
we see that I feel like Xavi started trying to second guess himself less and trying to put out the best possible 11, or trying to not or try not to do too much on the technical side. Because up to this Man U match, we were pissed off with Xavi having a great performance one day and doing the complete opposite the next day with the lineup. So I mean, I feel like this was one of those turning points that he started being a little more consistent and a little less flexible with how he treated his 11.
Yeah, yeah, it was just like that. We wanted to see Barcelona go into that game with their strongest possible 11 to get the win. And then in that second leg, when you have both Gavi suspended for that game, you have Pedri injured, and you have
Dembele.
Dembele injured, all of our key attacking players. It just made it very hard for at the time. Manchester United were like one of the best teams in the world just because they were so hot on form, and Marcus Rashford as well at that period of time was very good. And we get knocked out of the Europa League. But so not only did we get knocked out of the Champions League, we didn't make it past the round of 16. We also get knocked out by Manchester United. But we do bounce back in La Liga with a 2-0 win. No, with a 1-0 win against Almeria. And then
We lost 1-0
oh yeah,
against.
yeah, yeah, we lost. Like, what am I talking about? We did
No, you're
lost.
good.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
but,
yeah. So,
um,
like you said, after the United game, it was a very difficult time for Barcelona because it was very humiliating, obviously,
yeah.
to lose in the Champions League and now to lose in the Europe against a big time rival. But even after the Almeria loss, which I remember I was very frustrated about, we saw a 1-0 win against Madrid in the first leg of the Copa del Rey, which could have been 2-0 had it not been for a certain block by Ansu Fati.
Oh yeah,
Like
that block from Ansu Fati, like that could have been like key going into like the second leg, because a 2-goal advantage is completely different to like a 1-goal advantage.
for sure. And then we saw in the game against Valencia, we saw a victory. Again, this was the time in the season where we saw very scrappy wins. Everything was a goal or maybe two goals. Again, we saw it against Athletic Club. Against Madrid, I remember that very exciting performance against Madrid, where Kessie scores a goal in the last minute. A stoppage time goal was phenomenal. Very close game. Again, we're winning good. We're beating Elche. Unfortunately, we lost 4-0 to Madrid in in the Copa del Rey. We still had a lot of players missing. I don't remember if Christensen or Araujo, one of our center backs, was injured for this game.
For the first El Clasico, for where we won 2-1, or
Or for
where
the
we lost
second round of the Copa del Rey.
for the second round of the Copa del Rey, Christensen was out. Frankie De Jong was out. Pedri was out. Frank Dembele was out. We had a lot of players missing in that game. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, not the best performances, but still had injuries, which is another
Mhm.
point of the season where, hey, injuries are killing us. And then we saw some struggling performances, two ties, 0-0 against Girona and Getafe. And then we saw a bounce back against Atletico Madrid, another very close performance. Atletico played great that game, but I believe I don't remember if it was Busquets who scored that game. It was a midfielder, I think.
No, that one, the game against Atletico Madrid, it was Ferran Torres who scored in that game.
Right. Of course, yeah. I remember they
Yeah, it was
crossed.
Ferran Torres, and this was like the time where, hey, Barcelona needed to get this win because Atletico Madrid were very good on form, and if Barcelona lost this game, Barcelona would have been on a lot of pressure to win this because, for example, Real Madrid were hot on our tail. For example, they got the win, and two draws in a row, and a defeat against Atletico Madrid at home. It would have been very bad for us. Um, Barcelona do get the win against Atletico Madrid, but they lose against Rayo Vallecano. And I remember this game. The game was so atrociously bad. But we follow up with more victories. We get the
Yeah,
victories against Real Betis,
great
against
performance there.
Osasuna. Great performances against Espanyol,
Where we won the title. Yeah,
where we won the title, where we get the Liga title, and then we basically like wrap up the season. We only have one game left against Celta de Vigo. Let's hopefully we get that Pichichi basically and that clean sheet record from Ter Stegen. But we also in those final games we see both Busquets and Jordi Alba's final game for Barcelona at the Camp Nou, for example. We don't know if they're going to be playing, for example, in against Celta de Vigo, but I believe that Xavi has said like that's Busquets and Jordi Alba's last game ever for Barcelona. So, and I think it's a very good ending. Just have them go out at home with the crowd, with their name chanted and everything. There's no reason why you should take them against Celta de Vigo when basically there's nothing to play for. Um, but what do you guys make of like what are your feelings after seeing the emotions of Busquets, of Jordi Alba, for example?
I'm gonna put money on the table, and I know for a fact that your Diaba left. I know he was waiting for Busquets to leave. I get that feeling. I feel like if Busquets had told Barca, "I'm staying 10 more years," Jordi would be like same. I feel like I feel like Jordi was waiting for Busquets, which like it's not really that important right now. But I keep thinking about that. I feel like he was gonna leave when Busquets was gonna leave. I don't know.
Hmm.
I
Okay,
don't know.
Alex, what are your thoughts on Jordi Alba's and Busquets like exit?
I thought that was expected. I didn't think they were gonna go another season. Certainly not Alba. Busquets. Um, I thought maybe one more season he'll run it back, but then seeing him leave, it makes sense.
That's what we wanted. We wanted Busquets to stay and Yaraba to leave. If one had to stay 1 more year, we wanted Busquets to be. But
But
remember that we kept seeing rumors about Jordi Alba possibly staying with the Messi rumors that he
yeah,
wanted.
exactly. See, but
So
like I wanted Jordi Alba to stay, for example, because like he did like have like a lot of attacking metal. Like he's still like one of the, like best like offensive fullbacks. It's just that defensively and like he doesn't have the legs anymore. And so I'm thinking like, hey, as a backup left back, he still has like a lot of utility. Just the problem are his wages, for example. If Jordi Alba stayed with like a much lower salary, I would have totally been fine with that. Just Busquets, I believe it was the time to leave. Just you're leaving after winning two trophies, living in the La Liga title. I think it was a good point in leaving, especially for example, like Busquets after the games against Bayern and the games against El Clasico, he was very much criticized. Like people were saying, like, "Hey, he's passing, he has to leave." I remember that Busquets was criticized like at the start of the season because of his poor performances. But with that four-man midfield, he did improve throughout the season. But now looking at the season as a whole, what are your thoughts at the season as a whole? When you look at it, because when I look at the season, I look at two things. Our attack throughout the entire season has not been good. Lewandowski was like very good at the very. I believe it was like the first, like right before the World Cup. After the World Cup, it was a completely different Lewandowski. Lewandowski like wasn't really hitting on form. Then Bele was injured. Rafinha at the start, he wasn't good. It was only until like later throughout the
I mean,
season.
the thing is that we saw that Xavi for the most part of the first half of the season, he wasn't to experiment with the wings. He saw that Dembele and Rafinha didn't work at the same time. Fati and Ferran were not getting the job done on one side, so we saw a lot of inconsistency on the wing. And again, like you said, Lewandowski has some great moments, but he was pretty inconsistent to start the season. So I mean, the offense, I mean, it picked up at the end, but at the start, it was a question mark. And then, kind of to continue talking about a team from when you started. I mean, the midfield was pretty. I mean, we have. I don't think I have any complaints about the midfield, especially after Xavi
Mhm.
started running out of form in midfield. I don't think. I
No,
don't think we have. I don't think we have any complaints.
no, yeah, like Xavi has like basically has found his basically his system with that format in midfield, and because the attack wasn't where it should have been because either just players were injured or the players weren't very good, weren't in good form. Xavi focused on that defense. He basically found that solidity, and even though like most of the games we didn't play well, we got the job done. Gid
Do you
get it done.
think? Do
That
you
simple.
do you think that Xavi might run back a former midfield next season?
I think so. But
I
I might
I'm
also see, for example, if Messi comes, we have a three-man midfield and have Messi as like that fourth, like as the cam basically. And then
Yeah,
that's what I
I
think.
feel like the formation is going to depend solely on what to do with transfers. Because
Hmm.
obviously you're going to go after wingers. You're going to need to run that 4-3-3, and I feel like it would be a good thing for Xavi to have that Plan B formation in the back of his head. So if he decides that he's going to stick to the 4-4-2 to start the season, you can
Hmm.
keep that 4-3-3 in the back of your head. So I mean,
Yeah. Um. Oh yeah, Alex, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I feel like going back to the original topic, I think overall this season was a really important learning experience for the team and for Xavi because we saw Xavi got his first full season under his belt. I
Yeah.
thought it was a successful one. Yes, we didn't win in Europe. We didn't do anything significant there, and we didn't win all the domestic trophies. We couldn't get the treble, but
Yeah.
still, two trophies.
Two trophies.
Your first full season as a manager,
Hmm.
I think it's a great season. I think you look at any other team and they say, well, it's a phenomenal season. It's just when you're Barca, you have really high expectations of what your team should be
Yeah.
doing. People don't realize how important. But for a team that hadn't won the Champions, for a team that hadn't won the La Liga since 2019, I believe,
Yeah. It was 2019, 4 years.
I think it was great to see it back. Not everything was great. We learned a lot with the players. Xavi certainly experimented a lot, and this needed to happen. Coaches need to experiment. They need to see what works, what doesn't, and the only way you do that is by trying it in game.
Hmm.
Simple as that. You're not gonna know how 4-3-3 or 4-4-2 runs against any team if you don't actually play them. So
Hmm. And so something also to keep in mind is that this La Liga title and that Supercopa de España, for most of these players on the squad, it's their first trophies because we have a very young squad. For example, we
mhm.
have Frankie De Jong, for example, who won his first La Liga title when he came in Barcelona. Barcelona, it was in the 1920 season. Barcelona didn't win La Liga until this year.
I mean
Gavi,
that entire midfield,
yeah,
just
yeah, that entire midfield,
entire midfield
Pedri,
and Balde
Gavi,
and Balde.
Exactly. Balde, Christensen, for example, all of these players are winning their first trophies at Barcelona. Christensen, he did win trophies at Chelsea, for example. He won the Champions League, etc. But these guys, they're winning like their first trophies at the club, and that's huge because this is a very young squad. I believe it's the second youngest squad in La Liga, and so winning La Liga with such a young squad, it just shows like, hey, we have a new core. We have a new core. It's in the end of the era. We have legends leaving, such as Busquets, Pique, Jordi Alba, and these guys are paving the way for next season. Um, and so next season, I expect Barcelona to do well in Europe. to be more proactive in the attack, continue their success in the defense, and challenge on all fronts. For example, because we do want challenge in Europe, we want La Copa del Rey, and we want to basically win back-to-back La Liga titles.
And look, teams like Barca and Madrid, it's always gonna be either you win La Liga, the UCL, either La Liga or the UCL, or it's a failure of a season. Doesn't matter if you win however many other domestic trophies. It will always be if you don't win La Liga, the UCL is a failure for a super team, for super teams, super clubs like Barca and Madrid.
Hmm.
So I mean, you can only build from here. You win
Okay.
La Liga, aim for at least around 16 the UCL.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Okay, so guys, who is your MVP of the season? Who's Barcelona? Who's been Barcelona's best player throughout the entire season?
I'm gonna say Ter Stegen, dude.
Ter Stegen. That's
Especially
a
after how bad he was last year.
yeah. That's a
Mm,
very good shout.
that could probably be like if there was like a most improved award for the most improved player in La Liga compared to last year, he was to be a top two candidate. So
Okay, Alex.
I'm gonna have to say, uh, I'll say Ter Stegen as well, but honorable mentions to Andreas Christensen and Ronald Araujo.
I would also mention a throw in the hat, for example, Robert Lewandowski. Robert Lewandowski,
true.
who basically he is the Pichichi leader. For example, in multiple games, he got us the goals. For example, remember that game against Mallorca away from home, where his goal basically gave us the 3 points. There were multiple games like that where his goals basically gave us the win. And in a league season, basically, to win the La Liga title, you need stat padders. You need players who basically score in every single game. It could be one goal, it could be two goals, it could be three goals, for example. But getting a goal every single game in a league is super important, because it just basically increases the possibility of you winning. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. But I do agree with you guys. I think Ter Stegen, just for the solidity he brought in that defense, the presence he had in goal, I and especially just like the form that he was in, just able to save in Barcelona in so many occasions. I do believe that he is Barcelona's MVP. But at the same time, I wouldn't be against it if, for example, you say Araujo or Christensen or Pedri, for example, who did have very good moments throughout the season. I was like that. But now, just final question before we round off the episode, guys. What do you rate Barcelona season? A rating between 1 through 10. What do you guys rate it the season?
I'm gonna say 8 out of 10. I was about
Okay.
to say 7.5 because again, it's really frustrating to not make it past the group stage for the second year in a row,
Okay.
especially after bringing in names like Lewandowski. But I'm gonna give it an 8 because you do win La Liga and very comfortably. You win another domestic trophy in the Supercopa. You win the I'm gonna call it the Mickey Mouse Trophy that we won in Saudi Arabia. We can joke around about that, but yeah, I mean we'll see. I mean we'll see how we do in the next year, but for me it'll be an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Alex.
I'll go for the same exact scoreline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Edison. SJ, welcome to the Kool-Aid podcast. What do you rank Barcelona season? A rating between 1 through 10.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. We hear you loud and clear.
7.5 or 7.
Okay, very well. What do you make of FC Barcelona season as a whole? Do you think it was a good season? Well, what do you think about it?
I think it was a good season. I think we struggled in the later half of the season because I think of the motivational issues, injuries, and also that the 4-4-2 tactic, the fourth midfielder did not work out in the later stages. But I think in Europe, the problem is not Xavi or not this season only. The problem in Europe has been lingering for 6 or 7 seasons now. So
I
we
agree
need to
with that.
fix that. I don't
Hmm.
think Xavi is to blame for some of the things, but I think some of the criticism towards Xavi has been a bit harsh. I also believe that we need a pivot who can take us to the next level, because if we f up this pivot signing, then I think we'll struggle for next 2 or 3 years, because every one of you knows very well for FC Barcelona, pivot is the engine.
You're,
So
you're
that's
completely
the
right.
issue.
You're
And
completely.
I would
Mhm.
like to hear your pivot number one. What's the best pivot you think we should sign?
Okay, looking at Barcelona's pivot options, it's like this. You have Zubamendi, which is like Xavi's favorite, for example, but it's that 60 million price tag, which is a problem. And Zubamendi has made it clear that he wants to stay at Real Sociedad because they made it into the Champions League. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so he wants to stay there. Kimmich would be like the dream signing, for example, if that's possible. But there's no way that Bayern let him go, and it's too expensive. It's that simple. There are some rumors that Ruben Neves is coming, but I don't see him as like a pivot replacement, for example. Um, and so when you're looking at the options, I'm thinking, hey, maybe Gundogan, a player who can basically like come in and basically have like a double pivot with Frankie De Jong,
Hmm.
or Amrabat, for example, for like 20 to 25 million. I think those are the two options that are realistic, for example. If we have like a big sale, for example, if Rafinha leaves, or we have like a big sale of Ansu Fati or anything like that, I do believe that we can get, for example, Zubamendi. But it will be hard. But as you said, yeah, reinforcing that pivot is extremely vital. And Busquets said, like, hey, we need a 9 out of 10 pivot to reinforce that midfield, because it's super key. And next season, I think the most important thing is to basically reinforce the quality and our depth in the squad, because that's where we lacked like throughout the entire season.
Can I
And
make
I'll
one point?
uh-huh. But that's also the very good that you brought up like the pivot options. But I also want to talk about like one of the points that you said, and it's the mentality in the squad. How basically if the problem has been lingering for the past 6 to 7 years, and that's very true. Barcelona, and they really haven't competed much in Europe. When you look about, for example, the games against Roma, Anfield, Bayern, PSG, Juventus, all these games, Barcelona hasn't competed at the very highest level, and this is due to like an poor recruitment, an aging squad, that core just like not being it. Um,
Yeah,
would
I
you?
just think. Sorry to interrupt. I just think
No.
the main issue with the Barcelona in the last 6 to 7 years has been that the aging squad and the
Hmm.
lack of proper recruitment. We saw that, as replacements, we saw players like Arthur, players like Coutinho, who players that are out of their prime or just aren't at the level that Barcelona needs.
Yeah.
And we started seeing um, kind of like an exit from that phase where we were just getting like any player that they thought of, basically. We started seeing players like Pedri join. We started seeing players like that. But I
Yeah.
think it's mainly been the problem with Europe has mainly been, yes, an aging squad. I can think of in 2019 when Messi carried us against Liverpool. Um, you have players like Ivan Rakitic who weren't, they weren't doing all that. You have players. I believe also Dembele played that game, who played terribly. He had a wide open miss.
Oh, that miss at the home leg, it was so bad. That
So
that miss
yeah,
could have like that could have
yeah.
Dembele scores that and it's 4-0, and we take that into Anfield. It's a
I
completely
mean,
different story.
yeah, and it's just that we had an aging squad, and I think Barcelona has finally left that. I think we got rid of the last few aging players, so we have basically a clean slate with all of these youngsters. But now it's a matter of Xavi getting the job done as a coach, and the team, like you said,
Hmm.
finding the right motivation, the right rhythm to carry this on to next season, because the season isn't just the league or the domestic trophies or the UCL. It's all of those going on at once and being able to distribute that and be
One
able
point
to
I
get.
would like to make. Sorry to interrupt. One point I would like to make. I think if we hadn't got humiliated so badly, I think there are phases when teams go through no UCLs. Real Madrid won zero UCLs from 2002 to 2012. Real Madrid went on a 32-year non-UCL winning streak. The
Hmm.
problem with Barcelona is we have got humiliated so bad that it's obviously the social media era. So everyone is like, okay, Barcelona is trash in the UCL. It's not that. We were not trash in the UCL till 2015. We were actually competing. And in the year Atletico Madrid defeated us, we actually played well. I think
We did.
we actually played well. So I think for me, last point before I'll go, and first of all,
Okay.
thank you for having me
But
on the podcast.
thank you for coming on.
Yeah, so I think on the left wing, I think the clear option is Arsenal's left winger. I think that's the option we have to go for in 2 or 3 years. Gabriel Martinelli. I think that's the option. I think in two or
Do
three
you,
years we
do-
should be looking at.
but do you think that Arsenal would let him go? Because Arsenal are building a project.
Yeah, I don't
Barcelona,
think
Real Madrid are too big for any pull.
Uh-huh.
I don't. I think Brazilian talent, you give him the left wing. I think on the DM role, we should not look anything against Zubimendi. I think Zubimendi is the guy. You go
Uh-huh.
for him, you don't spend your money poorly, and you spend on Zubimendi. And I think
hmm
right back issue, I think Arnau Martinez is also a good option.
He's a very good option. And Barcelona
Yeah,
are also linked with Cancelo, for example. I think, for example, like Cancelo is more of like an attacking option, for example.
yeah,
Defensively, I don't know. Like he doesn't feel me the greatest of confidence. But Xavi's
yeah.
like, I think favorite is Juan Foyth from Villarreal. Just once again, it's a price tag. Barcelona needs sales in order to make that happen. I think it's like Juan Foyth is 45 million. But guys, final thoughts before we round off the episode. Final thoughts on the season, of like any topic like you want to discuss, for example, like PK farewell, Jordi Alba farewell, any topics on the season or like whatever happened.
Peace out, guys. Peace out.
Peace out, SJ. Thank you for coming on.
thank you. Yeah, so nothing much more to say. I'll just leave with the thought that what we did this season, we got a double for the next.
Okay, Alvaro,
Make a deep UCO run.
make a
Seriously,
deep zero.
we,
I
we, we, we can compete perfectly fine in La Liga and the domestic trophies. Just
mhm.
bring in the right pieces. Hopefully, Xavi and the directory sticks to their word of prioritizing the pivot, which means they will overlook price tags. That's what I'm hoping. And yeah, make a deep UCO run.
I definitely that's our key for next season. But guys, that was it for tonight's episode. It was a long episode. We basically talked about like basically everything that happened throughout the season. We talked about what went well, what went wrong, what we think we should be improved. And it's definitely our UCL run. We want FC Barcelona to basically go deep in the UCL next season. But guys, I really hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode. As always, I'm gonna post this episode on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. So make sure to tune in if you'd like to have it like on podcast format. Go there and tune in. But guys, remember we also are on Twitch. It's basically at Kool-Aid Podcast. Just all of our social media platforms are basically that. And guys, remember, like, subscribe, and comment. That basically helps out the channel out a ton. And we'll